And welcome to the second ever episode of the Bagels.
The second ever episode.
Of the Bagels and Breadsticks podcast.
The second episode that there's ever been.
Yes. We're going to keep riffing on this joke. I'm Richard.
I'm Logan.
And this year, oh my god, this week.
We're still mild tennis enthusiasts this week.
Yeah, we still are. But no, we're talking about 2022 retirements. We're talking about big names that have retired this calendar year.
Yeah.
And then obviously,
no one in particular.
Yeah, and obviously we're gonna end it off with the elephant in the room. But there's so much to be said about that individual. So let's start it out with some other big names that called it quits this year. Ash Barty. Was a big surprise.
Yes, that was.
Very big surprise.
Yeah, no.
I personally saw a good amount of domination from her. She was playing so well, and her style is just so difficult to counter, and she was doing so well. I was very surprised to see her retire.
I was as well, but I mean, I don't know.
But I mean, look what happened afterwards.
Exactly.
Like, the minute after, then Iga Swiatek takes the number 1 ranking and then goes on her 37-match win streak.
I was about to say, it's almost poetic. You quit while you're at the top, and then someone else goes to the top. It's like,
there's a lot of players that have quit at the top.
Yeah.
Flavia Pennetta quit after she won the 2014 U.S. Open.
Yeah.
A year earlier, Marion Bartoli did the same thing at Wimbledon. She won and then bowed out. I don't know, what do you think about that? Kind of just winning your major and then saying, this is how I want to go out. Thank you very much. Goodbye. Have a good one.
I respect that. I respect that highly. I mean, I think there's a lot of respectable angles to take in a career, I mean, obviously, like, stretching it as thin as humanly possible because you just love it so much. Like, that's great. And that's a different kind of dedication,
But then there's the other question to be asked of what happens if you stay? Do you have the chance? Would you win more? We never know. Like
tough.
If Pennetta or Bartoli would have won more had they stayed.
It's a tough question.
You can predict, but you can't
exactly. Yeah.
Say it in concrete detail, yes or no.
Mm-hmm. Exactly.
But I do understand they were towards the older end and towards the end of their careers, and then they just win, and it was kind of just like, okay, thanks. This is my goodbye. Like this is how I want to end it off.
Right.
And with where they were in their careers, I kind of agree. I kind of don't think that they would have won much more. Pennetta wanted to go, I believe she wanted to go start a family because she has her child with Fabio Fognini. And Bartoli, I think Bartoli's win came because the finalists that year, Sabine Lisicki, took out her 2 main threats in the semis and quarters. In the semis, she took out Aga Radwanska. In the quarters, she took out Serena Williams. I think that had she lost to either, the other would have won. Because Bartoli,
that's a valid assessment.
Bartoli had losing records against both Radwanska and Williams. I don't think she had ever beaten either one of them. So I think it kind of makes sense, but there is also the question of you never know. Maybe they would have won one more. Who knows?
Yeah, I don't know.
But Ash Barty was very decorated, honestly.
She was
She had her
phenomenal.
Wimbledon title. She had her French Open title. She had her Australian Open title. I kind of wanted to see her complete a calendar slam.
Oh yeah,
If she had won
Cap
the
it off
US,
with the
that
US
would have
Open.
and that would have been a great way to go out.
Holy shit!
If she had come to New York, won it and then closed it out, winning completing the calendar slam. Not the calendar slam, the career slam.
The energy would be incredible. It would be immaculate. Just the I've won it.
But the other thing is she's done a lot of great things for Australian women's tennis as well.
Oh, for sure.
I mean, there wasn't very much. I mean, everybody knows her relationship to Yvonne Goolagong, which was so long ago. And I think you've had such great faces at the front of Australian men's tennis with Pat Cash, Pat Rafter, and then going to Layton Hewitt, and then now going to like Alex de Minaur and Nick Kyrgios. But on the women's side, there was no kind of like strong spearhead that was really pushing and making those far moves into tournaments until Ash Barty came out of nowhere.
Yeah.
But with that, there's another player who actually on her second retirement, or retired officially earlier this year, Kim Clijsters. I personally loved Kim Clijsters. I was very happy to see her come back. Um, she was a great player, and I think it was kind of surprising when she announced her comeback. I think once you leave the game, you never lose your love for the game, but also like it was kind of surprising. For those who don't know, Clijsters was a great player in the 2000s, and then she retired after winning the 2010 U.S. Open, I believe, and then she came back not too long ago. I want to say somewhere around probably 2017, 18. Had a good run, didn't achieve too much, but you know, she's former world number one in both singles and doubles, 4 Grand Slam singles titles, 1 Australian and 3 US, and 2 Grand Slams in doubles, 1 French and 1 Wimbledon. So I mean, technically speaking, when you combine her singles and her doubles, she does have a career slam technically. No, but a great player all around. Great rivalries with Justine Henin and Serena Williams. Really, really great player that I kind of got to see the tail end of her career when I was growing up in 2009 and 2010 when she won the U.S. Open, and in 2011 when she won the Australian. But overall, a really great player that I think, honestly, it is probably right. It is probably right for her to go now. I mean, she's made an insane mark on the sport.
Right. Well, yeah. I think, I don't know, there's just the...
And what do you think about players retiring and then coming back out of retirement?
Yeah.
I think Clijsters did that. Martina Hingis did that.
A lot of people like misconstrue it as like some like embarrassing like crawl back. I think a lot. Like people are like, oh, like they couldn't stay retired. But I think there's like something like really interesting to be said about it, because it doesn't strike me as that at all. It's like, especially in her case, right? Because for that it was like a continuation, I think. It felt like a break, you know?
Yeah.
If that makes sense. So I think if anything, like for her specific situation, it was just like I'm saying, a continuation, you know? And I think it was just she needed to come back, I think. Yeah. I think she owed it to herself to come back for a bit.
No, yeah. But I also think there have been some really great examples of successful comebacks.
Yeah.
And let's talk like briefly about Martina Hingis. What an absolute career she had when she came back. She did so many great things as a singles player in the late 90s, but then she comes back to play doubles. And she wins the Australian Open in 2016, and this is just women's doubles. 2016 Australian Open, 2015 Wimbledon, 2015 and 17 US Open. She won the Tour Finals in 2015.
Oh, yeah.
And then in mixed, she won all 4 slams. 2015 Australian, 2016 French, 2015 and 17, both Wimbledon and the US. She swept the US in 2015 and 17, winning both the women's doubles and the mixed doubles.
That's so much.
And then she coached 3 insanely good players. I think Martina Hingis is a good example of you can come back and do very well. Mm-hmm. I remember the absolutely unbeatable pair in mixed doubles of Martina Hingis and one of the greatest like doubles players I think tennis will ever see in Leander Paes. I'm just going through right now the different partners that she had, and they're insane. Leander Paes, Jamie Murray, Sania Mirza, who's actually next on our list to talk about, who officially retired. I'm sorry, I have to riff on Leander Paes for 5 seconds here. I want to count how many Grand Slams he has. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8 in men's doubles, and then 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. 10. So a combined, what is that? 18?
Yeah. That's 18.
I personally believe that Leander Paes is one of the greatest doubles players.
Yeah, that's just a fantastic record.
And then obviously she also played with Jamie Murray, who I believe younger brother of Andy Murray, who is older brother, is insanely good. Also has many accolades. She picked some very good partners because Jamie Murray, Leander Paes, Sania Mirza, all former doubles number ones. And I think this is the right time to kind of riff into Sania Mirza, who also hung up her racket this year. 3 Grand Slams in doubles and another 3 in mixed doubles. Former world number 1. Really, really great player. A very underrated player. Had some decent results in singles, but always regarded as a doubles player. Yeah. I feel like every player is regarded in one light more than the other.
Oh, for sure. Yeah, you don't.
There's not many players that you can kind of regard as both.
Right.
But yeah, I would personally say one of the best players to come out of India. There's a lot of like unfortunate retirements, I think, for us, Logan, just because a lot of these players are kind of who we grew up watching.
Yeah.
You know? And that kind of transitions us into the next few.
We're getting old, man.
Yelena Yankovic, former world number 1. I have some opinions on Yelena Yankovic because I personally don't know how much she achieved. She made 1 Grand Slam final in 2008 when she lost to Serena Williams at the US Open. And with that said, I also kind of say the same about players like, I don't know, Karolina Pliskova. There's a lot of players that get to world number 1, and sometimes you look back and you just say, huh, why? And not to say I have anything against Yelena Yankovic, I just, that's one of those players that I kind of just always think back and was like, huh, she was world number 1 at one point. I think those players just come out of like benefiting off of the inconsistencies.
I was about to say, because it's complicated because it kind of is. The point structure gets wrapped up in the environment of the game at that point in time, right? So like if you have like a very skewed like ranking, it's because of those inconsistencies. And I mean, I don't know. I mean, at least she gets to say that. I mean, not a lot of people get to say that.
Yeah.
You know, and there is something to be said about performing well over inconsistency.
Yeah.
That's for sure.
And now I'm going to bring in some topics that I think Logan's going to be able to talk about a bit more than the past ones. As I...
Yes. Oh, perhaps.
It's a lot of big names for, again, when we were growing up. And let's start it off strong with Jo-Wilfried Tsonga, who hung up his racket after the French Open this year.
Oh my gosh, I remember like...
I remember his heyday when he was doing really well, and Tsonga was always a pretty entertaining...
a joy to watch.
Exactly, a joy to watch, a very entertaining player to watch. Very passionate.
Oh yeah, that's a word I would use.
That's a word,
That's a word. That's a word. Oh my god. Everyone was posting like the most like wholesome, like in like very energetic like tribute videos like after like he announced it. I was like, what? I was like, what?
Yeah.
Song is retiring.
I mean, he achieved some really great things in his career. He is positive on his singles win-loss record. He is the former world number 5. He has 18 career titles. He was the finalist at the 2008 Australian Open when he lost to Novak. I think, I don't know, Tsonga was always kind of like a consistency when we were growing up. You kind of knew that his name, you knew his name was always going to be in the mix. I think, I personally think that he if we eliminate the big three, I do think that he had the potential to win a Grand Slam.
Mm-hmm.
I think a lot of players just have the unfortunate circumstance of having their peak in their career come at a time where the peak of the big three was happening.
Exactly.
Even even the big four, when you put in Andy Murray, you know, that few years between 2012 and 2016 when he was playing very well.
That was like me and David Ferrer.
Oh yeah, I think he also deserved to win.
I think so.
A Grand Slam. And I think it's really sad to see him go, but he's also 37.
Well, yeah.
He's seen
getting up there.
Yeah, he's getting up there. He's
had his heyday.
Some really great, achievements.
Mm-hmm.
He's won Davis Cup. He has an Olympic silver medal in doubles.
Mm-hmm.
He has finals counted in. He has a Grand Slam final in singles. He has Masters 1000 titles. There's a lot of things that I think you can look back on his career and kind of smile at and realize, he was at the top of the top. He was, one of the big names at the time. He was a
strong, very strong player, and it was...
Absolutely.
Yeah.
These next two names are some pretty vintage names that I don't think we've really seen until, at least for me, when I literally started watching this sport. And that's starting with Philip Kohlschreiber.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, where does one begin with Philip Kohlschreiber? I don't know. This name and the next one are kind of names that were always consistencies. Like, you knew their name because you knew they were good, and they were always in that solid, like, top 30 group that was always vying for the top of the top, for the best of the best.
I don't personally remember seeing him on
and
television.
That's Philip Kohlschreiber, and the next one is Tommy Robredo, so I'll kind of put them together.
Yeah.
I don't know, Kohlschreiber was always a good player. He was always... I mean, I don't want to necessarily say, consistent, but he has some very good wins under his belt. He has some very great matches under his belt. I don't know. I always kind of remembered Kohlschreiber's name. It was always, like I said, a consistency. And the same goes for Tommy Robredo. I mean, another really, really great player. The main thing that I remember about both of these guys are their backhands. Really, really, like, they were, at the time, were, like, one-handed backhands were the thing. And they had some really great one-handed backhands. And I don't know. I think, again, these are the kinds of guys where, like, you're at that point in your career where things are slowing down.
Yeah, so
there's not many outs except for just retiring, kind of calling it quits.
Right.
But I think before we go into the very heavy ones, we're going to... gradually get there, and we're going to start off with Kevin Anderson.
Mm-hmm.
The South American giant himself.
The South American.
Sorry, South African.
The South American.
Sorry.
In case you guys didn't know, Kevin Anderson is from South America.
In case you guys didn't realize, we are recording this at almost midnight.
Oh, we're fine.
Yeah, Kevin Anderson, the South African giant. Yeah. Apologies. I'll get it together. No, I love Kevin Anderson.
He's a cool guy.
What I love about Kevin Anderson is he has a great example of when college tennis players go well.
Yes.
Oh a product of the University of Illinois. Mm-hmm. Proof that college players can see real success. Former world number 5, 7 career titles, finalist at both Wimbledon and the U.S. Open, a positive win-loss record on his career. I personally, I don't know about you, I was very sad to see him go.
Yeah, I was pretty sad. One of them, I was telling Richard about this earlier, one of my, I think most memorable experiences was watching a game with where he played Milos Raonic at the U.S. Open a little while ago, and it was awesome Like, just the way he was, like, I mean, yeah, he's tall, but, like, his serves were, like, incredible.
But he always knew, and this is the big thing, when you're a big server, you need to know how to capitalize off of those serves. That's something that I believe Andy Roddick did well. That's something I believe Kevin Anderson did well.
Yes.
And I think that's something that John Isner did well at the peak of his career.
Yes.
I think,
100%.
Yeah, if you're going to have a big serve, you need to know how to take that and turn that into an advantage and be able to capitalize and put your opponent in a position that's most advantageous to yourself. And that's something that Kevin Anderson definitely knew how to do very well. And also his two...
Yes. He made top 5 at his highest ranking, which is an incredible feat alone, especially, like...
Again, it's at a point where the big 3 was very prominent.
Yeah. Sneaking into, like, top 10, you know, that's the huge deal territory at that point.
When the big 3 was at its peak, if you were in the top 10 and consistently in the top 10, not just I'm gonna peek my head in and bow right out, consistently in the top 10, that takes something, because you're gonna face them in tournaments and they're gonna be issues to get over, and if they stop you, then there's a trickle down effect on your ranking, and you know.
And then there's also, like, he's like South African, right? Like the only flag that the only time I'd seen that flag up there for like a bit on the men's side, and
No, yeah, but I think now we're starting to get some really good South African players, as in Lloyd Harris has been really great recently, and I think when you get people from countries that we don't really see that much, and they're doing really well and they're getting the success, just like Kevin Anderson had for South Africa, you inspire a generation, you inspire a lot more players to play, and it kind of sparks a trickle-down effect in your own nation of people starting to play more and get more into it, and then people are like, I'm seeing this person from my country, and I'm like, okay, I can do it too, so let me start to put more of myself into it. And I feel like that's kind of what we saw when you look at Lloyd Harris going into... Kevin Anderson going into Lloyd Harris, and you look at Aga Radwanska going into Iga Swiatek, and you look at, I don't know what else...
Djokovic becoming the king of Serbia.
I'm kidding. Marin Cilic trickling into Borna Coric.
That's a good one.
I think that's a good one.
Those
are some just examples. There's a lot more, but yeah, trickle down effect. You kind of, when you have somebody from your country do very well, it kind of inspires a whole new generation.
Right.
I mean, Serena Williams is a great segue. Serena Williams had her name to bout out this year. The inspiration that she's been to a lot of players, not even just American, but like, for example, Naomi Osaka.
Oh yeah.
And then like back to the Americans, Coco Gauff. And those are two incredible players, and especially specifically someone like Coco. Do we think someone like Coco would have been as invested in the sport and as inspired to play the sport if it wasn't for someone like the Williams sisters? We never know.
We
like, she attributes a lot of her success and a lot of her career to Serena and Venus. And so
foundational,
man. Let's talk about, I think this is a very interesting discussion to have. I mentioned to Logan, we're gonna, and just spoilers, we're gonna talk about the greatest of all time on the men's side. But
I was thinking just now, is he going to bring up that argument where we're going to talk about the greatest WTA player?
I do. I do want to bring that up because it's a very interesting conversation. And personally, I will say, I do think it's Serena. It is.
Oh.
But
really?
What's really difficult about it?
Did you change your mind last time we had this conversation?
Yes, I did.
Wow.
Because I looked more because I looked more into it. And I think okay.
Do you think it goes beyond just statistics at this point with them as what makes
partly.
Okay.
But you also need to look at not only Serena's effect in the singles, but also in the doubles.
That's a good point.
You look at her doubles record, and then you look at also her outside of Grand Slam record. To give context to what Logan was saying, I used to bring another individual into the conversation with Serena, and that was Steffi Graf.
Yes.
And I stand behind my words of saying that Steffi Graf should be regarded as one of... I put her in the top 3 greatest women's players to play the game.
Yeah.
22 Grand Slam titles, the only player to have the calendar Golden Slam, which is all 4 Grand Slams and the Olympic gold medal in one calendar year. Oh,
damn.
An incredible player, and I love looking back and seeing her game style. She did, like, her gameplay was, I think, influenced, and a lot of times when people think back to Steffi Graf, something that stands out to a lot of people is her backhand. And it's because she is one of the rare players that was able to take a backhand slice and make it so elegant and work it to her advantage. She took a backhand slice and, in a way, made it aggressive. And I love going back and watching Steffi play, but I think what's very difficult about it is thinking about different eras. There are 3 women that most of the time will come into play when it comes down to, statistically, or at least by Grand Slam number, the greatest of all time. Margaret Court with 24, Serena with 23, and then Steffi Graf with 22. Also, needs to be mentioned, the fact that you can tell who Serena Williams is based off of a first-name basis speaks volumes. But I think it's very difficult to compare because Serena Williams played with this modern game, whereas Margaret Court was the 70s and the 80s. Steffi was the 80s and the 90s, and then Serena was the 90s, 2000s, 2010s, and 2020s.
And that cycles back to our conversation about how it's difficult to compare these players because they were...
It's difficult to compare them unless they played against each other.
Exactly. We're not teeing this up quite yet. But like it's the whole because they were playing in such different like eras, like it's hard
with
to
very
say.
Different game styles, with very different technology.
Yes.
Like when you look at the way
and
the game
culture.
is played, exactly the way the game is played now when Serena played it compared to when the game was played when Steffi Graf played it, when Margaret Court played. Technique has changed so much. The style of the game has changed so much.
Rackets, balls,
and the
courts.
rackets and balls have changed so much. There's so much technology now in rackets that genuinely it begs the question, what if you took Serena Williams' racket and put it in the hands of Margaret Court? And what would happen then? And
what if you gave Margaret Court a Yonex E-Zone 98?
Okay, here's what needs to be imagined. When you look at the game that was played when Margaret Court and Billie Jean King and those players were playing, and even to bring on to the men's side with Rod Laver and all them, the game was played with holding the racket with continental grip.
Oh yeah.
And it was very flat.
Yeah.
And then you look now when there's like semi-western, western, eastern grip, playing with topspin, playing flat, playing with slice, and then different strategies. And you look over time when Steffi was playing, you had a big serve and volley movement with players like Martina Navratilova and John McEnroe. And even going into the 90s with Pete Sampras and Pat Cash and players really attacking the net.
Right. And then you come
to now, and everybody's playing at the baseline.
Yeah.
And
it's wild.
Yeah.
Like you can't play like that anymore.
Like it's very rare to find a serve and volleyer now, and I think someone who does it well is the American Maxime Cressy, who sees such success on the grass courts because he plays serve and volley. And serve and volley, I think that's why with Cressy, I feel like we see a lot of success with him on the grass court portion of the year, and that's because he plays serve and volley, because you want to get up there and you want to finish the point, and when you play a volley, the volley's going to bounce really low, and on the very low,
and it's on the grass,
so on the very low and fast skimming, like you said, court, like grass court. It works very well. You want to riff into this?
I don't know, man.
I agree with you.
I think at this point we should just let it happen. Let it happen.
Then with the most
wait,
roughest of transitions.
In the roughest of transitions, I don't know if you guys heard,
Yeah.
We were doing this bit before starting this up. I don't know if you guys heard. I heard it down the grapevine.
Through the grapevine.
Through a little birdie told me.
That a very small, very obscure.
I don't know if
very obscure.
Very
I
obscure.
think this is where Logan and my expertise comes out. Very obscure players.
Yeah, very obscure. I don't think you guys have heard of him before.
He's
from Switzerland.
Yeah, and if you want to say
of
together,
all places,
his name is Roger.
Yeah, Roger Federer.
No, yeah, this is a bit that Logan wanted. It's it's not bad. No.
Oh my god.
This is very bittersweet for me to talk about.
Oh my god. Since we're on the topic of...
We grew up watching him play. We grew up during part of his like peak. There's a very long peak when you talk about somebody like Roger Federer. I think
and beautiful peak.
I want to start this off with, I don't know if anyone will ever play this sport with the elegance and the grace that Roger Federer played it with.
Dude,
He made tennis look so easy.
You could give me all of the stats you want. And he is at like the top of the stat board, yes, but like you look at like his charisma, you look at his sexy backhand.
And I don't know about you. I've met Roger.
Oh, whoa. Actually?
Yes.
Holy fuck, how have we never had this conversation? Excuse my... I'm sorry, I've been surprised so much in these last 10 seconds. You met him.
Hello, ladies and gentlemen, and thank you very much to the 2014 U.S. Open.
Talk about that.
My dad and I were at the U.S. Open, and we were at the practice courts, and I remember vividly, Richard Gasquet and David Ferrer had just finished practicing, and I just got their autographs, and my dad and I were like, all right, we're ready to go. We'll go to the next court. We'll go watch a match. And then just, like, a absolute migration just ran to the entrance. And so I naturally got knocked with it, and since I was just walking out, I got my way to the front. And out comes Roger Federer with a team of security guards. And Roger literally just came out to sign autographs. That's it, to just talk to fans and sign autographs. And I remember me and a few kids around me got to talk to him, and kind of very short, very brief conversation, but I think it encapsulates why I love Roger so much. Of all the tennis players I've met, because I've met a bunch, there are two that stand out to me as the nicest I have ever met. And one of them will not surprise you. The other one might. One of them is Roger. The other one is Novak. The nicest players I've met of all of my encounters, because I am an insane tennis fanatic. So, just for reference on Novak's. Again, thank you to the U.S. Open for putting in the net generation thing, thanks to the USTA. and so when I was, back in 2018, when I was I think it was 16, and I was passing, because you have to be 18 and under to get into the autograph zone.
Yeah.
And so I got, listen, I wasn't a jerk. I was 16. I let the 5-year-olds and younger go in front of me. But
you're such a saint for that.
With that said, yeah. I'm tall. So me and my friends, because that was the year I went with some of my teammates from my high school tennis team, we just stood in the back and had a full conversation, like a mini conversation with Novak over these children. And the best part was, we got our autographs because all we had to do was take our arm and stick it forward.
Over the kids' heads.
Over the kids. Which, I'm not going to be a jerk. I'm not going to block a 5-year-old from getting an autograph from then world number 1, Novak Djokovic. Yeah. I'd be a jerk.
Yes.
So we let them go in front, knowing fully that we didn't have to be in the front.
Dude.
We could just go over them. We felt bad. We're like good humans. We don't want to.
True.
And we also made sure that said children were not, like, pushed and thrown around.
Right.
Because you know how, like, vicious children can be.
Yeah, you gotta let that be their defining moment right there.
Yes.
Meeting Novak Djokovic.
But
dude, I envy you so much for that. That's insane that you.
After this recording, I will.
This is what happens when you live near where the U.S. Open is.
After this recording, I will be reading off to Logan all of the players that I've met at the U.S. Open. And we will just see his...
I was about to say, can you believe that he has not gone through this list with me ever?
I'll record a blooper of just your reaction.
Up until this point...
And we'll release it whenever we feel like.
Up until this point, I think I've only... You met Berrettini?
Yes, I did.
Yeah.
I met Berrettini at the U.S. Open this year.
Yeah, this year.
No, but I do have to say, going back to Roger,
yes.
I think one of the reasons why Roger is so loved, and I think one of the reasons why he is highly regarded in the GOAT conversation, I think, above all, to be one of the greatest of all time, you don't only need the on-court statistics. You need to be a good person off the court.
Exactly.
And I think Roger embodies that.
Right.
The humility, the grace that he carries himself, the love for the game. I think above all, it's so much easier to be good at the game, to play the game, to be a good person when it comes to on and off the court, is when you love what you're doing. And Roger loves the sport of tennis so much. Yeah.
Like, he says it a million times, but he doesn't have to say it for, like, us to know.
Yeah.
You know, like, oh my gosh.
But I think... Let's just
so many things.
Statistics.
So many things going. Let's get those out of the way.
Because statistics.
Let's get those out of the way.
24-year career spanning across four decades. He started in 1998, so the 90s, 2000s, 2010s, and 2020s. He has an 82% winning streak. He has 82% win percentage. I'm sorry. 1,251 career wins, 103 career titles, the second most in the Open era.
Yes.
One of two players ever in the Open era to reach 100 career titles. He is former world number one on multiple occasions, 5-time year-end world number one, the longest consecutive streak at world number one, 20 Grand Slam titles, the first to reach 20. He has 6 tour finals, an Olympic silver medal in singles, an Olympic gold medal in doubles, a Davis Cup crown, 3 Hopman Cups. Need more be said? Easily.
That's such a heavy
one
list.
of the greatest players to ever play this game. And I think
100%.
I think a strong argument here for him is he played, unlike the other members of the Big Three, he played at a time where some of the players from the old generation were at the end of their peak. I think everybody remembers the iconic Wimbledon match of Roger versus Pete Sampras.
Yeah. I remember.
Roger kind of had his breakthrough moment. And
I watched that.
Yeah.
Back. Rather.
Watched it back.
Yeah. Yeah.
But Roger played at a time, like, he got to play against Pete Sampras when Pete was still playing very well. He got to play against Andre Agassi at the time he was playing very well. All these amazing players he got to play against. You know, before Roger, people thought Pete Sampras was going to be the greatest of all time with his 14 Grand Slams. And here comes Roger saying, hold my beer, and comes rolling through to 20.
Yeah.
I do think that it's hard to deny him at least the conversation of the greatest of all time.
It's hard not to. And you know, it's interesting because sort of before we sort of leave the territory of his like early kind of developmental stages in tennis, it's very interesting because he's going back to sort of that fact that he's such like a mature player, and the fact that he loves the game, and he's at this sort of like like elevated like perspective when playing it because
Yeah.
he sort of like represents the sport. I remember watching him in an interview where he said he was like, I used to be such a hothead.
Yeah.
You know, and he's referring to these sort of early years of his where he was like with these like very influential players, right? Like Pete Sampras.
Yeah.
And it's just so interesting to sort of look at that defining moment of his and sort of examine it and sort of like think of like, wow, he's here because he was like a mild hothead and played like Pete Sampras, but he
Yeah.
got over that and then he, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
I just think
But I
that
think
examining
also,
that era of his, I feel like people don't often examine that era of
Yeah.
his, but it's like a defining sort of thing. A lot of tennis players go through that kind of era.
I think also when you look at
Yeah.
his rivalries outside of the big three, there are so many amazing names, even outside the big four.
Oh, yes.
The Federer-Roddick rivalry. That was our childhood. That's what we grew up watching. We grew up watching Roger versus Andy Roddick. We watched Roger versus Leighton Hewitt, another fantastic player. Even going further, David Nalbandian. What a player! What a backhand! I loved watching David Nalbandian, and again, I'm very grateful that I got to watch all of these amazing players live and in person, and I got to see them.
Yeah, that's
And
so cool.
you know, keeping it going, Murat Safin.
Oh my God.
What a player! Andre Agassi, like we mentioned, Stan Wawrinka, Del Potro,
Oh.
Tomas Berdych, Songa, which we talked about, and Marin Cilic. I think the ones I want to riff on here that I personally loved watching growing up, Delpo.
Can I say, before you continue,
Yeah.
is it weird that the most memorable Roger match to me, and my favorite Roger match ever, was when he lost to Delpo in the 2009 U.S. Open?
Yeah, that's an iconic match.
That
one.
I went back and watched that on YouTube like several times. Like it's like
I
the
think-
level
yeah.
of tennis
Yeah.
in that game alone is incredible.
I-
It's such an emotional moment for both of them. I love it so much.
I
It's
think what's
such a
also
good match.
interesting is that there are three matches that stand out in my mind of iconic moments where Roger lost, but Roger was still a big part of it. And the three ones that I
Exactly.
want to point out here:
And they're 5 games.
the 2008 Wimbledon final against Rafa, the 2009 U.S. Open final, like you mentioned, against
Yes.
Delpo,
Oh, I love it.
and the 2012 Olympic finals when he lost to Andy Murray.
Oh my God, yes. That's a good point.
Three matches that I personally loved watching. But I think
Watching him versus Murray when
But I
Andy
think-
Murray was like in his like peak, those were so good, especially like on grass too, because like they both were like cornering grass. Oh my God.
But I think what's amazing is that Roger has iconic moments when he loses, and I think part of the reason why is because he never stopped fighting in those matches. He played at such a high level throughout the entire match.
Yeah, his opponents had to earn those games very hard.
But-
Hard. But I think also what makes those games so memorable is because they say so much about him as a player and as a person, right? As well as a player, right? I don't know.
But what I think is the last thing I want to mention before we get into that entire conversation that we mentioned earlier. Roger Federer inspired an entire generation.
Oh yeah. Oh yeah.
Alcaraz, Rude, Dimitrov, even going a little bit older. as
I was about to
Dimitrov,
say Dimitrov, yeah.
inspired so many players, and there's so many players that
It's
attribute their success to Roger the same way that so many women's players attribute their success to Serena, and so many men also attribute to the other members of the big three. So many of our top next gen players now attribute their success to Roger.
I know, and it's so uncanny. I can't imagine. They talk about this like all the time, like about how like they grew up watching Roger, and now they got to play alongside with Roger. and like that's such a surreal experience for them, but like how that's like helped them like develop as players like immensely, like, and that
I
kind
think
of ripple effect is crazy.
I think when you get to a point like Roger and Serena and Rafa and Novak, where you are able to inspire people to play, and then you get to play them in their big moments.
Oh my god. Yeah.
Like, I don't know what's some good examples. Dominic Thiem versus Roger at the Indian Wells Master 1000 final. Naomi Osaka versus Serena Williams. Their multiple finals. I mean, Casper Ruud versus Rafa at the French Open earlier this year.
Yes.
Carlos Alcaraz versus Rafa Nadal earlier this year.
And on his birthday. I'm going to bring that up
So many people and players that these guys have influenced. And I think that's a very, very awesome and very full circle moment when you get to inspire a generation and then play alongside and against them and share the court with them.
That does so much, like, generationally. Like, it's like, and that goes back to what I brought up, what we were bringing up earlier with him playing Pete Sampras, right? It's the same thing. It's cyclical, these kinds of handoffs.
But I also think when you look at the four main players that we just mentioned, every single one of them you can recognize off of a first name. Serena, Roger, Rafa, Novak.
You can even say Raphael, and I would know who you're talking about.
Like, on first name alone. And I think, again, like I said, with Serena, that speaks volumes.
Yeah.
The impact that they've had on the sport. They've changed the way the game is played. Like, Rafa's banana forehand, you know, his very whippy forehand.
I play with his banana forehand. I wanted to be like him so bad.
Novak's backhand and return. Mm-hmm. Roger's elegant forehand and backhand.
Dude, his backhand.
His volleys even to an extent. Yeah. Roger was a very complete player.
Very well.
Serena's serve and her power. So many things to reminisce on. And I think we need to end this episode with the GOAT conversation.
The GOAT conversation.
It's a very tough one.
Yeah.
But I want to ask you. I know who I'm saying.
Is it the man that in an interview stated that when they asked him about playing tennis video games that had him in it, he said it was boring to play me because I was an all-around character and those aren't fun to play in video games?
Who said that?
Roger said that.
Jeez.
No, it was a funny interview.
For me, I know I'm going to annoy some people with this. Personally, I think when all is said and done, the greatest of all time will be Novak Djokovic. And here's why. Novak already has 22 slams.
Thank you for saying
and
this.
He's not done. He's not done. By any means.
Oh
like,
my God.
if...
Dude, he could have...
He has the potential to hit 25.
Imagine if he played the U.S. Open this year.
I personally believe that Novak Djokovic has the potential and might actually end his career with the most Grand Slam titles of any individual in singles on both the men's and women's side. Do I think he has 3 more in him? Yes, I do. I do.
Man is elastic.
Doesn't matter if you like him or you don't. You need to respect the hustle, the dedication, the hard work.
And can I talk about that? I know that, like, from time to time, people like have weird things about him because of like his his conduct on court, right? People like don't like these like moments that he has sometimes that like a lot of players have. And I don't know. I think Novak is actually one of the most misunderstood players.
That's fair.
I think because it's because of that, you know. I think because it's like you said, you know, I do believe that he's a very great guy, you know.
Yeah.
And so much proves that he's a great guy, you know.
Absolutely.
And I don't know. I almost went on a tangent, but like.
No, I was gonna say is I remember vividly watching. I believe it was the French Open final from 2021 between
him and Tsitsipas.
Yes, him and Tsitsipas. And
that game.
I remember this moment vividly because I was sitting with my coach. Shout out Richard Henry and Vibe Tennis. I want Rich on an episode of this podcast. I'm saying it right now.
This is funny.
And we were sitting and watching the final, and Novak goes down 2 sets. Tsitsipas wins the first 2, 7-6, 6-2. And Novak sits down and puts a towel over his head and just sits there through the break between the second and third set. Just sits there and pretty much meditates and manifests the rest of this match. Then he comes out and plays probably some of the best tennis we've ever seen from him.
I know.
Like,
can I say I hate to interrupt your excited flow.
Please interrupt.
And this is hilarious because me and him were talking about sports betting the other day. This is the funny time for me to tell you that this is one of very few tennis matches I betted on, and I was
really.
I was like I thought Tsitsipas was gonna win.
Oh, whoops.
Yeah, that was a whoops. And I was actually out practicing that day. And I was like, Tsitsipas is up 2 sets, and I was like, and me and my coach had to laugh about it, and then we both like stopped, and we were like, wait, he's playing excuse me, I need to stop.
No,
I'm
you're
getting too excited. I'm getting too excited.
He's playing Novak
Djokovic. You can't do that.
You really can't.
You're up 2 sets, and you have the whole rest of the game in front of you. At this point, that man is a fortress. He's a fortress. Yeah. And like,
here's my main...
oh my God.
Here's my main argument for Novak. Oh my God. Number 1. Yeah. Number 1, if I'm not mistaken, I'm just going to quickly, before I misspeak, I'm going to quickly fact check myself because I'm pretty sure this is correct. Nope. Oh, so slightly off. He is, by 0.1%, has a lower win percentage than Rafa. Rafa has an 83.3% and Novak an 83.2%. But I digress. I think he has the most weeks at world number 1, if I'm not mistaken. 22 Grand Slams. But what I want to point out
it's also about
is this.
Yeah.
If you told me that I was gonna die and to save my life, I had to put my money on one of the big 3, and you did not tell me what surface they were playing on, I'm picking Novak.
Oh, 100%. You can't not bring that up. Is that his slams,
versatility amongst the different court surfaces.
I know.
Is probably better than the other 2.
I know. And for the longest time, people confined him to the Australian Open, but he hasn't even split.
In all fairness, he has 9 of them. He has 9 of them.
He does, but also in all fairness,
he also has 7 Wimbledon titles.
Yeah, he also has 7 Wimbledon titles.
Here's what I need to mention. With Rafa, not to say he is bad on grass or hard court. In a matter of fact, he's great, but his dominance on clay, yes. Roger's dominance on the grass court, yes. Here's where I have to say this. If you want to take the weakest surface of each of the big 3, I take Novak on hard court over Rafa on grass and Roger on clay. Here's why. Game style. Novak's game style is very versatile to many different surfaces. Rafa plays with heavy topspin. His game really benefits from the slow and high bouncing courts of the clay.
True.
It benefits from a slow ball. He's a very fast mover, a really good mover. So he benefits from the slower and higher bouncing ball. Roger on the clay, it doesn't work for him. It works for him on grass and hard court, faster courts, where Roger plays a flatter ball than Rafa. He plays with an Eastern grip, whereas Rafa plays with either a semi-Western or Western. It's escaping me right now.
Western as hell.
I think it's Western. I think it's
Western
very Western.
As hell. It's far west.
Rafa plays with so much topspin.
Yeah.
It benefits him so much there. Roger plays with Eastern. He plays with a much flatter and a much more old school stroke. He plays with the same grip and the same style that Pete Sampras did in the 90s.
I was about to say, and that's very interesting.
And
But,
as we know, like Pete Sampras, domination where? At the All England Club, at Wimbledon. And I think when you look at Novak, if we are looking at grip specifically, Novak does play, if I'm not mistaken, with a semi-Western grip.
Semi, yes.
Semi-Western.
Which is
what
versatile.
I play with.
Yeah.
Which is what I play with. It's very versatile. You can produce many different types of shots with it. You can produce topspin, but you can also flatten it a bit. And I think he does very well adapting to different court surfaces, whereas the other two have a weak court, so to speak.
That's fair, yeah.
And I think part of it shows with the distribution of his slams. Now, each of the big three has...
That's just a result.
Each of the big three has one very, very heavy section. Rafa, how many now? Is that 14? I don't want to know.
Dude, man is basically French.
I don't know how many. 3, 6, 9, 12, 13. Yep, 14. 14 French Open titles. I think that's what... I think if it wasn't for Rafa, Novak would have way more. I genuinely... If Rafa...
Oh, yeah.
Yeah. If it wasn't Rafa, it was going to be Novak. Novak has
over Roger 100%.
9 Australian, 2 French, 7 Wimbledon, 3 US. Whereas Rafa has 2 Australian, 2 Wimbledon, 4 US, and 14 French. I am now realizing that I misspoke. I very heavily misspoke. I am blaming this on exhaustion brain. I apologize. Rafa has 22 and Novak has 21.
Yeah.
Again, I will backtrack and quickly say, do I think Novak has the potential to... Do I think Novak has the potential to win 4 more? Yes, I do. I do think he does. It's a matter of a very controversial topic of COVID. But I think...
Yeah.
Well, if Rafa is injured at the French, my money will be on Novak or Carlos or Ruud.
Well, it's basically like it's.
I think it's Novak. I think he wins Wimbledon too. I do.
Well, I don't think it's controversial. I just think that like as many like little small weird obstacles that somehow get in his way of competing. Yeah. Right, then he would be dominating.
Yes.
Like, there's no reason he should be at 7 right now.
I'm not gonna lie. If he was if he was in the U.S. Open draw this year, it would be very hard to deny him.
Oh yeah.
It'd be very hard to deny him. And going back to the prior conversation,
with the whole shenanigans that happened with Wimbledon.
Yeah.
Like in the ATP earlier this year.
He's still ranked out. Like he's not ranked in the top 5, and that is a result of Wimbledon.
Yeah. That was stupid. That was weird. Actually, no.
There's 2 ends of that conversation, and we can talk about that later.
I'm not. That's political.
To go back to the prior conversation, when you look at Rogers now, 6 Australian, 5 US, 8 Wimbledon, and 1 French, and the 1 French, that was the year that Rafa. I remember that is the iconic year that he beat Robin Soderling in the final. Rafa, who lost in the 4th round to Soderling, that's an iconic moment in my opinion for Roger. His 2009, I vividly remember his fall to his knees. I think that was the moment. I think
for him,
and I think that's something that's so weird to remember is that Pete Sampras does not have a career slam because he never won the French. That's crazy to think about.
That is actually
someone that is regarded as
one of the best,
one of the greatest in history. I think for me, he's the greatest player when you look at that late '80s to '90s era between like him and Boris Becker and all them.
Yeah.
And to think he doesn't have a career slam is crazy.
Yeah.
But I think the GOAT conversation is always going to be so difficult. I think another thing to remember about Novak is that I believe he's currently the only player to have won every single Masters 1000s title.
True.
He has 88 career titles. I believe he has the most Masters of the big 3. I could be wrong on that one. But definitely I think a big thing is to have won every Masters 1000 title once. I don't think anyone else has done that. He's been the year-end number 1 on numerous occasions. In 2015, he reached 15 consecutive finals, won 3 majors, and a season record of 6 Masters 1000s titles and the year-end championships.
Can I tell you something?
Yeah.
You know what sucks within the context of this podcast and creating content for this podcast is that I agree with you.
No, yeah, we would love to have an argument, but go ahead.
And I mean, you can consider it from other angles. Let me take other angles for just 2 seconds here. It's like with
play devil's advocate, please.
Like Rafa obviously has the highest
Grand Slam
percentage
and Grand Slam
count, right? And no matter where you spread that, that's insane. And both him and Roger have done so much, I think a lot more for the culture of tennis than Novak has. Oh my god, everyone was fanboying the hell out of Rafa. His whole career, but also
I'm gonna say this. I think if you want to if you want to detail it and say the greatest clay court player to ever play, Rafa is easily number 1.
Oh yeah.
The greatest grass court player to ever play, you can definitely put Roger up there. But I think when you look at overall, it's hard. It's very hard to deny Novak.
You can also bring back in arguments that Roger was number 1 for the longest time.
And another one to remember is that Novak, unlike Rafa, does not have an Olympic gold.
Exactly. Right. And that's crazy.
But I think it's difficult now where their stats are still very close together.
Can you believe that he was so close to getting that Olympic gold?
Yeah.
And he didn't.
But here's my thing.
That sucked, man.
But here's what I'm saying. I think it's hard to compare them now where their stats are very close. But I think if you add plus, say, 5 years, when I think, let's be honest, they should all be retired in 5 years.
Yeah.
I think it's gonna be Novak. I do. But
statistically,
yes. But what piques my interest is, will anyone ever touch, at least for now, 22? That's what's interesting to me, is will we see someone come out of the woodworks and reach that number? Because remember...
Are we going to get another player of this caliber?
Exactly. And of this consistency.
Yes.
Remember, when Pete retired at 14, no one thought in a million years that anyone would touch that 14. And then Roger comes in and does 20. And then Rafa comes and wins 14 French Opens. Meets it. And then here comes Novak. He meets it. A record that people thought was absolutely unbeatable
was beaten
comes
thrice.
and is beaten thrice in a span of 20 years.
Oh my
god. Pete retired 20 years ago in 2002, if I'm not mistaken.
He's probably...
I mean, he's happy.
Oh, he's happy.
He's happy that his record's broken, actually. I think he mentioned in an interview once that he's happy.
I feel I would be happy if I were him. But
what I love about Pete Sampras' career, and this is the way that I think you retire. He has his 14 Grand Slam titles, and his retirement, his last match he ever played. He retired officially in 2003, but the last match he ever played was winning the 2002 U.S. Open. That's the perfect bookend. That's how you bookend an insane career.
End of year, a Grand Slam win, it's I don't know. It just works. It really works.
But like I said, I think until all the big three is retired, it's gonna be hard to complete that GOAT conversation. Yeah. And then you never know if somebody else is gonna come in and ruin our thunder and, take the place. But who do we think, as kind of like a bookend for this episode, who do we think, once they're all gone, somebody needs to, pick up the candle,
I hate thinking about this, because I look at our players now and I don't know. Because I don't think that, you keep, saying, emphasizing, they don't have that consistency.
I'm gonna be honest, I like the essence of unpredictability.
I do. But as much as I do, I still... Is it weird that I'm sitting here and I'm thinking about missing?
But where I think that comes from is the fact that we grew up at a time where there was such a domination.
Yeah.
And
it's also a cultural thing, I think.
But I think when you look at who added the most to the culture, I think I agree with you on it being Roger and Rafa.
Yeah.
They added so much to the sport, and their impact is insane.
Without a doubt.
They will definitely like when generations come, like in the future, like our kids, our grandkids are going to know those names. Like there is such a cultural impact from those guys, and their styles will be remembered. Their on court and off court will be remembered, and all this stuff. But I wanted to go back to that next gen conversation, and I think what's really great about the next gen is that we have so many different play styles, so to speak.
That is very
There's
true.
not one universal play style, which is nice because
I don't
different
think it should be
players,
that way, which is great, yeah.
because different players thrive on different surfaces. And with that said, different players will thrive at different majors under different conditions.
Yeah.
And, you know, honestly, I think we mentioned this last week. I think Carlos winning the U.S. Open is a really great indicator that he's not a one-court player. He's not just clay
Exactly.
court.
Yeah.
And he can play on
And same
on
with
hard.
Rude, too.
Absolutely. And I think those are some really great players to look forward to. And I think we also have some great, really young players coming up as well, like the Sebi Korda generation.
Oh, yeah.
I can't wait until Korda is like 22 and see what happens to his career. A lot of great players, and I think there are so many, and I keep riffing like you said on inconsistency, and there are so many players that, you know, like one has a fall when the other one has a rise, and then that's when different things happen. You have Alcaraz, Rude, Cam Norrie, Korda, Taylor Fritz. I think this U.S. Open gave us Francis Tiafoe into that conversation.
Yes.
So many different players that can peak and fall at different moments that I think will make the sport just even more exciting to watch. And with that said, I really, really hope that we have something more exciting for next week.
Instead of just hopeless nostalgia.
And if we don't, we'll come up with something.
Yeah, we will.
Because we always do.
Yep.
But, yeah. Thank you guys for listening, and we will catch you guys next week.
And thank you to all of the retired players. You guys were phenomenal.
Yeah. All right.
Yeah.
We'll catch you next week.
Yeah. Bye.